You're listening to the Fresh Hell podcast. Fresh Hell contains stories of a disturbing and often graphic nature and is intended for a mature audience. Please don't let your kids listen to this, or they might turn out like us. Hi, I'm Annie, the American.
And I'm Johanna in Austria, and this is Fresh Hell, your favorite award-winning international podcast. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. We are so happy you found us.
We really are. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. If you are new, then welcome. We're very glad you're here. Little disclaimer, we are two online friends who have still never met in real life. Listen, it was a whole thing. It was supposed to happen in the fall of 2020. We all got 2020'd, but here we are, and our mutual love for the macabre side of life just led us on this joined path of podcast hosting.
You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do it like this.
That?
We're not gonna announce when we have definite travel plans to meet, and then one of these days, you're just gonna hear the opening, "Hi, this is Annie in Austria." And then you'll know we are here together.
Do you think anybody will notice? Like, don't say anything else. Just. It's gonna be good.
One last thing before we start this episode. As always, we would love to give a huge and special shout out to our newest Patreon members. And they are Jim Kelly.
Hi, Jim.
Charlene,
Charlene, that's a pretty name.
It's
Thank
very
you.
pretty. Honey Badger Games.
Honey Badger don't care.
And Tamika Sears.
Thanks, Tamika. This is awesome. We really appreciate it so much. So today is the penultimate episode of Spooky Fuckery Month. And so far we have talked about terrifying urban legends and cursed objects. And so today we are going to talk about monsters.
Oh, I forgot to mention, you still have a couple of days to send us your creepy, paranormal, terrifying, sad story for our Halloween special.
That's right.
Don't be late.
Anything weird? Tell us about it. We want to hear about it. freshhellpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes. Today we are going to discuss cryptids. So, cryptozoology, which is a pseudoscience, the study of animals that are believed but not proven to exist. You know, like Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the Mothman, we talked about that one already. These creatures are called cryptids. And we decided it was past time to discuss some of these creepy crawlies once again. Most of the creatures we're discussing, well, actually all of the creatures we're discussing today come from the US.
Yeah, Europe is really hard. So much time has passed there that your mythical creatures are sort of just that. They're myth and legend, right? Well, they probably also definitely count as cryptids. It just doesn't feel the same, right? It's like the difference between a Pegasus and one of today's topics, the Jersey Devil, who has a face like a horse and also flies, right? But different things. Or referring to Krampus as a cryptid when he's really much more part of your cultural identity, right? It's kind of offensive when people take jokes about him too far, right? It's a little bit
Yeah, I mean, maybe not that much offensive as annoying. I really blame Hollywood for that, though. I think it's a fad. It's gonna pass.
Yeah, I think probably.
We don't want to cover as a cryptid anything that's part of someone's cultural identity or religious belief, so I think hopefully we avoided that. Yeah, I'd say so.
I hope so. Our first story is the flying spaghetti monster. No, I'm kidding. You don't want them coming for you. But really, in all seriousness, if you think this is a ridiculous topic and you just immediately dismiss all of these creatures as wild fantasy, we would like to remind you that gorillas, the giant squid, and everybody's favorite egg-laying venomous mammal, the duck-billed platypus, among others, were once cryptids. They were rumors and legends of really unbelievable creatures that were proven to be true.
Also, that reminds me, I had no idea that so many people nowadays still apparently think that narwhals are not real, that they're kind of cryptids. I just read an entire thread in a Facebook group I'm in, and it was highly fascinating.
I also saw something similar to that recently where it was a video of a group of narwhals together, and in the comments people were they really lost it. Yeah, it's good stuff. This whole episode, though, it creeps me out a little bit. Initially, we were looking at grouping them by type. You know, like you've got your sea serpents and your lake monsters are over here, and keep your forest dwellers over there. That's a different episode. And then things that fly are sort of over there, and that sort of aviary thing that worked out so well in the third Jurassic Park movie, that kind of thing. But then we remembered it's the spookiest season of all. The most macabre time of the year. That'd be a fun song to rewrite. And so we decided to tell you about some of the lesser-known cryptids that scare us the most. So one is a little lesser known, one is pretty well known.
Yeah.
And we really hope they're both hoaxes because they're scary. And we're going to tell you about them in an episode that we're calling, Hey, What's That in the Bushes?
Is that what we're calling it?
Can we?
I love it. We're gonna.
I'll find out when you post it. Johanna edits and uploads the episodes, so we'll all find out. All right. Should we get into it?
Yes, please.
All right. The first creature we're going to talk about is the Dover demon. And that's referring to Dover, Massachusetts, because you all know how obsessed I am with New England.
Yeah, you have no other topic on your mind. Maybe New England and the Old England. That's the only two things we ever talk about.
Yeah. So this is actually one I'd heard a few times, but I'd never looked into the specifics before. And now that I know the specifics, if I'm honest, I kind of wish I didn't, because it's really scary to me anyhow. This whole thing. The pictures, the drawings. Okay. So this all happens in April of 1977 in Dover, which I said is here in Massachusetts. It's about 15 miles or 24 kilometers southwest of Boston. It's another small town, and when our story takes place in 1977, so 44 years ago, there were less than 5,000 residents, and as of 2020, they are just shy of 6,000 residents. So imagine tree-lined, narrow roads, lots of stone walls through the woods. Very typical New England small town where nothing ever happens, but a very well-to-do one, so you still can't afford to live there. Yeah, everyone can picture this kind of place, I think, in their head. So it's April 21st, 1977. 17-year-old William Bartlett was with his friends Mike and Andy driving down Farm Street around 10 o'clock at night. Like many small-town teenagers, they were out driving around, looking for a party, probably hoping to score a few beers. Some of the accounts you read indicate that they were completely sober, but it's also possible they may have, brace yourself, shared a joint at some point earlier that night. But either way, nobody was really heavily intoxicated or on any kind of hallucinogenic drugs or had taken any sort of anything that would cause them to see what was seen that night. And so they're driving down Farm Street, going about 35 to 40 miles an hour, or around 60 kilometers an hour, when Bartlett notices something strange. It's about 10 feet away from him where he's sitting in the car as they drove by, and he only laid eyes on it for a few seconds, the amount of time it took for him to travel from one light post to another. But there, on the stone wall, he saw something sort of standing on the stones, something he'd never seen before, and something he would come to wish he had never seen. It was 3 or 4 feet tall, or around a meter tall, more human-like than animal in its shape. It had no tail, but it had long, thin, tendrily-like fingers. Ooh, I'm creeping out just reading the facts of this. I don't like it. With only 3 fingers on each hand. It had pinkish skin that Bill Bartlett described as looking like something out of a comic strip, which you can kind of imagine, right? If you imagine like the Sunday papers where you had that colored...
Mm-hmm.
And he described it as having a large watermelon-shaped head. All right, this is the part I really don't like. Disturbingly, he reported that the creature had no nose, no mouth, and no visible ears. What it did have were very, very large eyes with no eyelids that didn't blink and just stared, glowing sort of orange in the light of the car headlights. He was absolutely certain it wasn't a dog, a cat, or any other animal he'd seen before, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. Bill was a very talented artist then. He's a professional artist today. And so he drew a sketch of what he saw. And I've sent it to Johanna so she can see it, but I don't like it. On the sketch, he writes, "I, Bill Bartlett, swear on a stack of Bibles that I saw this creature." And then he signs his name, Billy Bartlett, to the artwork that he did. And then that same night, about 2 hours later, so I guess technically the next morning, a little after midnight the next morning, 15-year-old John Baxter had walked his girlfriend home, and he was returning to his own house, and so he's walking along when suddenly he spots the creature, which at first he thought was another kid he knew from school who lived on the same road. Because it was like, do you know what I mean? Like from a distance, it's a sort of humanoid shape, like way up ahead. But he's sort of like walking toward it, and then he's like, no, that's not my friend. This whole thing just really sounds terrible. So it just stared at him, and then it ran across the embankment and up to a small tree where he was able to only kind of see the outline of it, but he said that it had spindly arms and legs and a figure 8-shaped head with very large eyes that glowed reddish-orange, and he said it had sort of orangish skin, and he was quoted as saying, quote, "After standing there for a short while, I suddenly got very scared. I turned and walked away fast," end quote. And he also drew a sketch of what he had seen, and it matches the other sketch, and it's terrifying.
That's the terrifying part. I mean, I'm looking at it. First of all, the first sketch, that creature looks pissed, even though it doesn't have a mouth. You know what I mean? There is just eyes, and it looks kind of really pissed.
Menacing, yeah. Menacing or pissed? Yeah. I'm not sure. Both. Angry. Yeah, I don't like it.
It looks like an alien frog.
Yes. There is a froggy.
Yeah.
There was a frog-like
kind
something.
Of froggy.
The skinny neck, the long skinny neck, though, with the
giant head. You don't want to give birth to that.
I don't like it. I don't like it. And then it's got the hands, those creepy hands. I just think it's interesting that, again, we'll post these, the two sketches, the details are the way the feet grip the rocks. Do you know what I mean? Like, they really have such similar pictures that they independently created.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't like it. All right. So the next night was the third and final sighting of what would become to be known as the Dover Demon. A 15-year-old girl named Abby was being driven home by 18-year-old named Will, and they also saw something odd. She reported the same smallish figure with an egg-shaped head about the same size as its body, with huge eyes that glowed green. Now, this was different and the only difference from the other two sightings. But even when they confronted her and they were like, listen, we've had other reports of this. Are you sure these eyes weren't red? Are you sure they weren't orange? Are you sure about the color of the eyes? And she was sure what she had seen had green eyes. Will, who was driving, didn't get as good of a look, but he reported seeing something with a tan body and oversized head by the side of the road. And it was reported that the 3 places where the creature was spotted all lined up in a straight line across a 2-mile distance. And they were all near a water source.
Frog.
Maybe? All right. So what was the Dover Demon? That's next on my notes. So one of the most common explanations for what they saw that night, the thing you hear a lot of people say it probably was to explain it away, I don't buy it. They say it was either a young moose or a young cow. The moose theory is a problem for a couple of reasons. First, moose are pretty rare in Massachusetts, and they're more or less unheard of in that part of the state. I think there was 1 moose in the state that year, maybe 2. The second problem is that even if it had been a moose, moose are born in late May or early June. So in order to see a moose in April, it would have been born the previous spring or early summer, and so it would be almost a year-old moose, not a baby. You just wouldn't there wouldn't be newborn moose in April. Moose are also not colored a pinkish orange tan, which are the 3 colors the creature was described to be.
Do things like preemies occur in animals?
I don't think so, only because I know the woods in the area were searched and nobody found any evidence of a moose. And I think a moose that was that premature would probably be left to
die. Yeah,
I hate to say it, right? But that's nature, right? And it was also, the creature was reported to be completely hairless. And moose are born sort of, they're born and they're pretty much up and moving.
Moose and cows. They
exactly.
Have kind of fur, yeah.
Yeah. So I also don't think there's any way that teenagers in New England wouldn't be able to tell a cow or a moose calf or a young horse or a deer Do you know what I mean? Or like any kind of usual petting zoo feature or neighborhood forest dweller.
Unless it was kind of disformed, how you say that?
Right. If it had mange, maybe, or some kind of... Yeah, it's possible, but the way they drew the feet, do you think that could be mistaken for hooves?
These fingers and...
Yeah, I don't know.
It's standing upright.
Yeah, it doesn't... I don't know. Now, was it a hoax? It was 1977, so there was no social media and there were no cell phones. Both the police chief and the school principal, everything I read, it seemed to indicate that they felt that these kids were good kids who really wouldn't make something like this up. But they also said that, because, we all know kids who everybody would say were great kids who would never do anything wrong, but we've hung out with them and know what they do that no one else knows about,
also
right?
We just talked about the check the snipper craze and...
Yeah, exactly. But more importantly, it doesn't seem like the kids knew each other. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they were all really good friends who then happened to see the same thing. There doesn't seem to have been any kind of social connection between the three witnesses. And the police didn't believe that the kids were lying about what they had seen. Really, what would the point be? Apparently, when Billy got home that night, he was kind of upset. And he finally went up and drew a picture of what he had seen and showed it to his parents to kind of get it out of his brain. And that makes sense, art therapy. It's good for you. But if we give the witnesses the benefit of the doubt and we trust the judgment of the police and the school officials, then we can probably rule out a planned hoax. Moreover, Bill Bartlett, he's a really talented artist whose work I've actually seen, which was a fun realization. I looked him up and I was like, oh, I know this work. But he insists to this day that he wishes he'd never seen what he saw, but he did. He calls it the 15 minutes of fame that he never wanted. Like I said, he's a very talented fine arts painter, and he never painted the creature again after doing that initial sketch. I think he just wants to forget it. But he does wish someone else would see it again to confirm the truth that he knows to be true.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, right? If it wasn't an explainable animal and it wasn't an intentional hoax, could it have been aliens? I'm not saying it was aliens, but, it was probably aliens. There were no reports of lights in the sky or any kind of craft seen in the sky, and no one ever saw this creature again. It does, however, look much more like what we imagine little gray men to look like, doesn't it? It has that sort of spindly-limbed, big head, small creature kind of vibe that I'm not a fan of. But I do think it's worth noting that several things I read mentioned that Close Encounters of the Third Kind was released that same year. And so maybe it had had a subliminal effect and sort of caused these sightings with such similar creatures, because there is a little bit of similarity there. But this took place in April of 1977, and while Close Encounters was supposed to be released in the summer of 1977, it wasn't actually released until November 1977 in select theaters, and then it didn't open nationwide until that December. And then I tried to find out when the previews were, because sometimes those come out, these days especially, it feels like you get previews now for things that are like the next summer, like the tiniest trailers. But I don't think that was really the case back then. And the first thing I found, I think it was like a Siskel and Ebert review from November 1977. So I don't believe that the influence of Close Encounters of the Third Kind led to the sightings. I think it's an interesting coincidence that they were the same year, but I don't buy it. An October 2006 article in the Boston Globe entitled, quote, "Decades Later, the Dover Demon Still Haunts," end quote, Mark Sullivan writes, quote, "In Dover, a quiet community dotted with horse farms and one of the richest towns in the state, people are still not quite sure what to make of the story. Quote, "That thing has haunted me for 29 years, said Carl Sheridan, a former police chief. I knew the kids involved. They were good kids, pretty reliable kids. God knows what they saw," Sheridan said. "I still don't know. Strange things have happened. The whole thing was unusual," end quote. He got calls from all over the world when the case made the news, the former chief said, and he still does from time to time. "The thing will not die," Sheridan said. "I am telling you, the thing will not go away," end quote. And that is the very scary to me story of the Dover Demon. who I don't think anyone even believes is a demon. It's not even on the list. It's just such a popular adjective.
Yeah, it sounds great.
I know.
First of all, I have to say, I'm still amused when you sent me a WhatsApp telling me what you're gonna research, and WhatsApp made diver demon out of Dover demon. And I was like, I don't know what's a diver demon, but okay, interesting. I haven't heard about the Dover demon before, and I have to say, it looks so alien-like. He looks a little bit, the head looks like American Dad, Roger, the alien.
Oh.
Just this one is skinny.
Yeah. I don't like it. And you're right. The one that William Bartlett drew, it does have a particularly menacing sort of face.
Yeah. The eyes.
Yeah.
It's how, yeah.
Yeah, the eyes. He made the eyes appear. Well, he was taking fine arts classes. He went to the School of Museum of Fine Arts. He's a really, but even the other picture is really good. John Baxter. I'm really glad no one ever has asked me to draw anything from memory.
I'm really curious to see what our listeners will think, what it is, what it was.
Was it a hoax? I feel like it must have been some kind of hoax, but I just can't find anything to prove that.
If it was a hoax, then the third girl would have said, oh yes, they were orange reddish eyes.
I agree. Yeah.
I don't know. It's creepy. It's definitely creepy.
I don't like it. Wait till you guys see the pictures. Creepy.
All right. Our next story is also in the USA, but not in New England, but very close. This cryptid calls the Garden State of New Jersey his home. I think the last time we discussed New Jersey creatures at length, we were talking about sharks in the ocean, or
That's
sharks
right.
who left the ocean to travel upstream a little bit.
Man-eating turtles.
Yeah. Today we're going inland just a bit to an area known as the New Jersey Pine Barrens, part of the New Jersey Pinelands National Reserve, which includes approximately 1.1 million acres.
It's a huge amount of land.
It's almost a quarter of the state's entire land area, so it's big. And there are loads of creatures who call this undeveloped preserve home, according to the Pinelands Preservation Alliance. Quote, among animals we find 34 species of mammals, 36 species of fish, 24 amphibians, 30 reptiles, 144 birds, either year-round or migratory residents, and more than 10,000 invertebrate species. Mostly insects, worms, and other arthropods. Of the animals, 36 species are currently deemed threatened or endangered. End quote. And they also have their own page for the Jersey Devil. Quote, the New Jersey Pinelands is home to miles of pine trees and sandy roads, but it is also home to New Jersey's most infamous resident, the Jersey Devil. Designated in 1938 as the country's only state demon, the Jersey Devil is described as a kangaroo-like creature with the face of a horse, the head of a dog, bat-like wings, horns, and a tail. For more than 250 years, this mysterious creature is said to prowl through marshes of southern New Jersey and emerge periodically to rampage through the towns and cities. I think this sounds like your dream pet.
It does.
So they have a great website, which we'll, of course, link to. Unlike a lot of cryptid stories, there's a legend or two about exactly what the devil is and how it came to be, and that's what makes it so interesting, I think.
It is.
So the Leeds family were one of the state's earliest settlers, arriving from England. They were a Quaker family who set up house and raised their family. But things were hard for all the usual reasons of early settlement, plus other issues we'll get into later. In 1735, Deborah Leeds, who is more well known as Mother Leeds, was expecting her 13th child, and Mother had just fucking had it. Her family couldn't afford another child. She was probably exhausted from having had a child at the breast for well over 13 years.
Yeah, that lady is tired. She is tired. Her nipples are whatever comes after chapped. It's just so hard to breastfeed while chopping wood, right? We imagine.
Not only chopping wood, it's chopping wood, cooking over an open fire, so many hazards. We get it, It's a lot, we're not judging. But as legend has it, one of two things happened. Story 1 says that she was in labor and she cried out that the devil could have this baby. She didn't want it. She couldn't take care of it. She wanted it gone. And when she gave birth to a healthy baby, they watched in horror as the little feet turned into hooves, scaly wings grew out of its back, and its face morphed into a terrifying, long, horse or sheep-like head. Once transformed, the devil baby flew up the chimney, screaming a deafening shriek as it flew out into the night. The second story is that Mother Leeds gave birth to a hideous monster that attacked her and the midwife before screaming and flying out the chimney. So basically the same, but one was born this way, the other had a horrible, horrible transformation.
Yeah, either way, now you've got a devil baby. It's not good.
You've got a devil baby, you don't want to have a devil baby.
Nope.
And that devil baby would grow up to become the terrifying winged creature known as the Jersey Devil. It's said that the Jersey Devil spends its days sleeping in the wetlands near the New Jersey coast. But at night, it takes to the skies and flies around the pine barrens looking for people to terrify.
If I'm completely honest, spending my days sleeping by the beach and spending my nights terrifying people, it's kind of the dream job, isn't it?
Isn't it what you do already?
I wish. I'm working on it. Life goals.
It's great. It's absolute life goals. So let's talk about some of the sightings of the devil. Now, I know some of you might be a little bit surprised I'm telling you about the Jersey Devil, and there are 2 reasons for that. Annie made me do it.
I did.
No. The first is that we don't have cryptids so much as we have legends, which we mentioned at the beginning of the episode. The second reason that I'm telling you about the Jersey Devil is because one of the most well-known sightings of it, and this is really exciting for me, was by Napoleon Bonaparte's older brother Joseph. And Joseph had been made the king of Spain when his brother was the emperor of France. And after Napoleon's downfall, Joseph Bonaparte headed for the United States. He just left the old countries and moved over there. How did he afford to do so? Let's just say he partly took some of the Spanish crown jewels with him. I'm sure he just forgot to put them back.
Just a few very large diamonds. Whoops. Tiffany's hates when you do that. You have to give everything back that you tried on. A bitter experience has taught me.
And Joseph Bonaparte settled near the Delaware River in Bordentown, New Jersey. And here he built a lavish estate. Well, he had it built. And that estate is known as Point Breeze. And there were 60 acres for hunting and riding, underground tunnels for transporting goods, a man-made lake, a palatial home, and many outbuildings, one of which a gardener's building still stands today. We have a couple of paintings of Point Breeze to share with you. It was a beautiful home, and many famous politicians and thinkers of the day became regular visitors to what they called Bonaparte's Park, including John Adams, the Marquis of Lafayette, and Daniel Webster. The estate that was visible from the road from Philadelphia to New York was famous for its gardens and extensive art collection, and even had an 8,000 title library, which was one of the biggest in the United States at the time. It was even larger than the Library of Congress. And I know so many of our Hellions who will go like, 8,000 titles in a library. I know we have a lot of library fans there.
Yeah. And the Library of Congress is worth a visit if you ever find yourself in D.C. It's worth going through security to they have a Gutenberg bio. It's just beautiful. It's bibliophile porn.
Why am I telling you all about this Point Breeze? Because it was here at Point Breeze that Joseph Bonaparte himself saw the Jersey Devil. And the following is from the AmericanFolklore.net, an excerpt from Joseph Bonaparte and the Jersey Devil. A New Jersey legend retold by S.E. Schlosser. Quote, one snowy afternoon, the ex-king of Spain was hunting alone in the woods near his house when he spotted some strange tracks on the ground. They looked like the tracks of a 2-footed donkey. Bonaparte noticed that one foot was slightly larger than the other. The tracks ended abruptly, as if the creature had flown away. He stared at the tracks for a long moment, trying to figure out what the strange animal might be. At that moment, Bonaparte heard a strange hissing noise. Turning, he found himself face to face with a large winged creature with a horse-like head and bird-like legs. Astonished and frightened, he froze and stared at the beast, forgetting that he was carrying a rifle. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the creature hissed at him, beat its wings, and flew away. When he reported the incident to a friend later that day, Bonaparte was told that he had just seen the famous Jersey Devil, who had haunted the Pine Barrens ever since he was born to Mother Leeds one dark and stormy night in 1735. Bonaparte was impressed by the story of the Jersey Devil and thereafter kept a lookout for the fabulous creature whenever he went hunting. Once things settled down in Europe, Joseph Bonaparte returned to Europe and was reunited with his wife in Italy. He never saw the Jersey Devil again. End quote.
Yeah, and the park where Joseph Bonaparte saw everything, I actually found an interesting article in the Smithsonian. They are turning it into a park for the public, and they've been doing lots of archaeological digs, and they've found all sorts of really interesting bits of ephemera from Joseph's time there. So we'll link to that article if you live in the New Jersey area. It's probably going to be worth a visit.
Now, Joseph Bonaparte wasn't the only one looking for the devil, and of course, not everyone was hoping to see it. Many were terrified. Over the years, the Leeds Devil, as it was known by locals, was spotted frequently. The devil was blamed for the death of farm animals, and its terrifying scream was heard by many. It raided chicken coops and devastated crops. Huge rewards were offered for the capture of the devil, either dead or alive. And during the week of January 16th to 23, 1909, devil sightings reached a new high. Newspapers published claims of the creature attacking cars. There were reports of police firing on the creature and bullets not seeming to harm it. There were unidentified footprints found in the snow, or I think I should say hoof prints. 2 hoof prints found in places like the top of the chicken coop, which couldn't hold very much weight, and on the roofs of houses that were hard to access. Hoof prints over and under fences, and while some of this was certainly caused by intentional hoaxes, there was so much mass hysteria that they closed the schools for a week and even the local mill, as people were afraid to leave their homes. An article for WeirdNewJersey.com reports, quote, "In West Collingswood it appeared on the roof of a house and was described as an ostrich-like creature. Firemen turned their hose upon it, but it attacked them and then flew away. The entire week, people reported that their livestock, particularly their chickens, were being slaughtered. This was most widespread in the towns of Bridgeton and Millville." End quote. So, groups of vigilante hunters were roaming the Pinelands trying to find and kill the Leeds Devil. There's also a rumor that a zoo in Philadelphia offered $10,000 rewards for the creature, which only resulted in some pretty bad taxidermy. Pretty bad and interesting. While some of the tracks were admittedly a hoax, all of the tracks were never explained. And the sightings continued and actually never stopped. In 1960, several residents of Mays Landing were awoken by blood-curdling screams in the night.
It's funny, right? Because initially when you read about the sounds of screaming in the night, with this case in particular, you know, the Jersey Devil has said his screams are the thing you hear so often, but New Jersey has a lot of the same animals that we have here in their woods. And so there'd be foxes, fisher cats, coyotes, screech owls, all those kinds of things. And especially during mating season, it can be, I assume it's the same where you live, especially now that you're more in the country.
Yeah.
But it's shocking and alarming how loud some animals can be. If you've never heard amorous foxes, it legitimately sounds like someone is being murdered under your deck. You know, it's pretty disturbing. But these people that live here, they would all know what those sounds sound like, right? Like, I can only imagine the further in time we go, there are more animals, not less.
Yeah.
Right? It just seems to me, it's just interesting that so many people mention the screams because you would think these people would know normal animal screams.
Yeah.
It seems like a weird thing to say, the usual screams, but you know, people know what I mean.
No, some animals screaming can be terrifying.
Really scary.
My mom and I walked the dogs like last year. I think it was around the same time. It was fall and it was already dark. And we were walking next to a very densely wooded area, and an animal was screaming. We knew it was an animal, a bird, but it sounded like it was really, really in distress or hurt. So my mom, who is very brave, crawled into the bushes and into this densely wooded area, and the screaming immediately stopped. So the animal wasn't
startled
hurt. It was just,
just
screaming for the sake of it. But as you said, the people who did live in this area or who are still living in this area, they would know animals screaming. And a lot of articles refer to them as pinies. And maybe you get the impression that it's a term people in cities would use to, to make fun of them or I don't know, what words do you have in the US, like rednecks or country hick or something like that, yeah?
Right, yeah.
But I do think they refer to themselves as Pineys with pride. And yeah, I'm absolutely certain they would know the difference between your normal sort of scary screaming and demon screaming.
I mean, it's Demons 101, right? The screeching. It reminds me of my cousin Vinny with that tiny screech owl. There are just, I don't know. There are a lot of things that screech, and it's still kind of a leap to go straight to devil. But it's confusing. That's what makes these cases so interesting.
It's really confusing and it's really interesting. And it's not only interesting to us, it's interesting to so many people now and also in the past, because the hysteria in 1909, that 1 week, it is often compared to the Salem witch trials in their intensity.
Well, just the schools and businesses shut down.
Yeah, shutting everything down for 1 week because people are too scared to go to work or to school.
In the 1900s.
Yeah. And
right?
It's the same with the Jack the Snipper, right?
Yeah.
Kids were not allowed to go to school anymore, well, the girls and... Okay, so now it's 1960 and people are hearing these noises and they're really upsetting them. And in fact, they upset them so much that the police actually went around and hang flyers up that they had created to reassure residents that the Jersey Devil was a hoax. But guess what? The local residents did not buy it, and it probably wasn't helped that a local circus offered $100,000 reward for anybody who captured the creature. But guess what? No one received the award. And the sightings have continued to this day. In an article for NewJersey.com, Kelly Roncase writes about Mary Ritzer Christensen, who reported getting a creepy feeling one night in 1972 when she saw the devil while driving from Blackwood to Glassboro, and she said that the creature she saw in her rearview mirror was, quote, standing taller than the average man with haunches like a goat and a huge woolly head, end quote. She writes about mysterious death in 1980, where there was a very brutal death and partial consumption of some farm mosquitoes,
Yeah. Mosquitoes of the farming variety.
With no tracks or blood on the scene. Did something fly off with them and brought them back? Which is weird, right?
Yeah, I don't like it.
And there have been hundreds of witnesses. Campers and hikers have frequently had encounters or heard screams. In 1993, a forest ranger reported a strange creature blocking the road ahead of him that was about 6 feet tall with matted black fur and horns. Sightings of the Leeds Devil, which became more widely known as the Jersey Devil, continue to this very day. Okay, but what could it be? One answer may lie in the Jersey Devil's origin story. As I told you in the beginning, the story of the Leeds family and how Mother Leeds didn't want that 13th child. But there's something else you should know about the Leeds family. Father Leeds, whose first name was Daniel, arrived in 1677 and settled in Burlington, New Jersey. He published an almanac. This was a problem for his Quaker neighbors because astrology is used to create almanacs, and they felt this was an evil practice and he was dabbling in the occult. Daniel was personally offended when they started to attack him and when they started to call him evil, and so he published a series of books that were very satirical toward the Quakers, and it's some of the earliest political attack literature in America, actually. But this outraged the Quakers so much that they called him Satan's harbinger.
That seems harsh for someone who just wants to let you know when to plant the corn, no? I mean...
Exactly.
Satan's harbinger. He's like, listen, this is when you sow the pumpkins. This is when you sow the corn. I'm just trying to help people figure out when to plant the strawberries. Don't look at me. Satan's harbinger.
To quote NJ.com, quote, eventually, Daniel's son Titan Leeds took over running the almanac and ran squarely into Benjamin Franklin. The upstart Franklin was angling to make a name for himself as a publisher. As a publicity stunt, Franklin, in the guise of Poor Richard Saunders, claimed that astrological calculations showed Titan Leeds would die in 1733. When the prediction didn't pan out, Leeds called Franklin a fool and a liar. Never missing a beat, Franklin claimed that since Titan Leeds had died, his ghost must be doing all the shouting. Leeds tried to defend himself, but Franklin kept a straight face and argued that Leeds had been resurrected from the dead. The plan worked. Poor Richard's almanac became famous, while the pioneering Leeds almanac dwindled. Titan Leeds actually died in 1738. End quote.
That whole story is This whole episode is worth just that one story. I had no idea the history of the Poor Richard's Almanac. I mean, I knew it was Ben Franklin, but I didn't know how diabolical everybody was.
I think Benjamin Franklin is the one who looks the most, I don't know the English word for it, like mischievous on your dollar bills.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, he does. He looks like he knows a lot of secrets that none of us are privy to, which is, I think, probably fair.
So, basically the Leeds family ended up being easy marks for a country with growing anti-British sentiment, and the tale of a devil coming from this family would be kind of believable. So maybe we know the real origins of the urban legends, but we still don't know what did so many people see. Do we really believe that they're all hoaxes, or is there something flying around southern New Jersey just waiting to terrify you? I don't know, if you talk to hellions from the area, they'll tell you that while they're fairly sure it's not real, it was always in the back of their minds when they were out at night. And that's the story of the Jersey Devil.
Ugh, it's so interesting. I remember a lot of our hellions, Hillary and April and Tana, I think, were all discussing their remembered wariness of the Jersey Devil. There's a lot of weird, spooky, unexplained phenomena and legends around that part of New Jersey. So a terrifying monster tracks, like it fits with the area.
Yeah.
It's not one of those like, a monster here? We never have monsters here. Like, yeah, they could probably have monsters there for sure. So those are two of our favorite monsters. We hope you enjoy feels like the wrong word. Please enjoy these monsters.
We hope you found it as interesting as we did. Yeah.
How about something good?
No, you go.
Okay. I got a lot done this past week. My dad and my sister came to visit me, and we went out to visit my uncle in Western Mass, which was good. And I had a lot of doctor's appointments, which was not fun, but it's good to get those things checked off the list. And what else? My friend Misty came. People in our Facebook group know my friend Misty, and we actually went out and spent time together, and I got a haircut. I actually realized, Johanna, when I got my haircut, I didn't take a selfie. I meant to and then just didn't. But I remember when you said to me once how I had really straight hair, and I was like, it's so funny that she would think I have straight hair. And then I realized the only time I take a selfie is when I get my hair done. And when I get my hair done, it's so pretty. That's why I take a selfie, because it's so pretty and straight and smooth. And yeah, but it was just nice. It was really nice to just, spend some time with family and check a few things off the list. And I feel like there was one other thing that I was like, oh, I have to mention this in my something good, but I forgot it. Oh, Opus is learning how to use a doorbell. We got him a little doorbell for the back door. Because he just stands and puts his head on it's a screen door. We don't have a storm door. Our doors are really old, but he rests his head on like this wooden piece. I'll take a picture and show you guys, but he just rests his head and he doesn't make a noise. So we got this little doorbell so that it's right where he puts his head all the time, so that we can hear him now that it's getting colder out before he starts audibly crying, if he wants to come in. So yeah, that's all my good stuff. Also starting to look at maybe being able to visit you, which is exciting. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Can't wait. It's gonna be so much fun, but also kind of weird, don't you think? When we finally meet after all those years talking to each other.
Yeah. We'll just have to still text each other from the same room.
Different corners of the same room.
Yeah. How about you? What's good? What's happening?
When my husband was here, we went out to dinner with our friends to celebrate a certain award-winning podcast.
Oh, hooray!
And we went to a Peruvian restaurant here in Vienna, and I haven't had that kind of great food for years. And not only like Corona years, like really years. It was amazing. Like everything was so good. And now I'm kind of obsessed with Peruvian ceviche, which I only ever had Mexican ceviche, which is kind of different. And now I want to buy a Peruvian cookbook and make ceviche all the fucking time because, it's so good.
It's
so good. I had a quinoto, which is quinoa risotto with some great tuna. It was so good. Oh, and the dessert was a soufflé made from dulce de leche.
Ugh, I love dulce de leche.
It was so good.
Nom, nom, nom.
I can't wait for our house to be done with the remodeling, and I have a kitchen a good kitchen with enough space and I can start cooking it again because I love cooking. I love cooking and baking. Baking not so much, but a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the opposite now because I'm just constantly nauseous. So it'll be interesting to see if the surgery, they don't know what's causing it. So if it goes away after my surgery, it will have been the scarring in my digestive system. But if it doesn't, then it's the migraines. So I don't cook in the house. Like I can't stand the smell of cooking food. But listen, there's worse things. I'm very grateful that we can afford takeout. Thank you all so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to send our Halloween stories in, please.
Yeah, I'd say until Friday.
Yeah. freshhellpodcast@gmail.com is our email. freshhellpodcast.com is our website, and you will find our merchandise, our Patreon information, everything you need to know, our P.O. boxes, how to get in touch with us is on our website.
And if you like this episode or our other episodes, please do us a huge favor and go to your podcast app and see if you can leave us a rating and or a review. It would help us out so much. And we love to read your reviews. They are always so kind, loving and supporting, and we really thrive off of them.
We really appreciate it. And also to our YouTube listeners, if you would subscribe, that would be awesome. We really appreciate all of you too. Thank you.
Please tell your pets we said hi. Even if they have hooves, even if the hooves have not the same size, even if they have wings and hooves and are scaly and their fur is not the best. I mean, you could brush them once in a while, but yeah, hug them, cuddle them. Don't let them fly off into the night scaring people, right?
That's right. Use the good conditioner on them. Don't let them get matted. Keep your monsters clean and happy.
Give your fellow human beings and your neighbor monsters or whatever the benefit of the doubt. Be kind once in a while. Yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say about that.
That's all. And if you yourself are going through hell,
keep going. Tschüss.
Bye-bye.